In this video, we'll work on Section 3 of the IELTS General Reading, Book 19, Test 1. There are three question types: list of headings or matching headings, gap fill or complete the summary, and multiple choice questions or MCQs. Let's begin with list of headings. The passage is divided into sections A, B, C, D, and E. And from these headings, we have to choose which heading works best for which section. An important thing to keep in mind is that one section may have more than one paragraph. So when we are looking for a heading, we have to take all the paragraphs of the section into account. For choosing the correct heading, we need to get the gist or main idea of the section. One way to do this is to start reading each sentence. Wherever it starts making sense or wherever you feel you understand what the sentence is about, start skipping parts of the sentence that are not important. Skip names, examples, and other details. Then go through the headings, read each heading carefully, and think about what it suggests. Eliminate the ones you are sure are wrong. Cross out any headings that clearly do not match the main idea of the section. Then focus on the probable ones. There will usually be a maximum of 2 or 3 headings left. Compare them carefully with the section and choose the best fit. Let's start with section A. There are 3 paragraphs. The parts I focused on while skimming are highlighted in blue on your screen. The meanings of some words and phrases are also displayed on the screen. Let's break it down. The first paragraph says, language is changing faster now than ever before, and emojis are an important part of this fast change. In the second paragraph, we learn that emojis began in 2011. By 2015, 90% of the people online were using emojis. Then, word of the year was mentioned. Oxford University chose one of the emojis as their word of the year. Here, it is mentioned how word of the year is chosen and also that these words are usually forgotten very quickly. The third paragraph explains that emojis may also become outdated or become old fashioned in a few years. This gives an interesting perspective on how society is changing. Emojis provide a way to understand both history and future of human communication. Let's go through the headings. The first heading is why emojis may have a short life. Emojis having a short life is mentioned in this section. It says that the emoji chosen will also appear to be dated or old fashioned in a few years. Then it says that the reasons of why this will be old fashioned soon will help us understand society and human communication. The reasons or the why of emojis having a short life are not mentioned, but it is vaguely mentioned, so we'll keep it in mind. How emojis are designed, how they fulfill new needs of the society, how they are regarded by different cultures, the use of emojis in different fields, and the value of emojis for making feelings clear. These 5 are not mentioned at all. Yes, if you just go in for mention of words like society, which is mentioned in the passage, they may confuse you. But if you understand what the passage is saying and then what the heading is saying, they do not mean the same thing. The sixth heading says the rapid spread of a new way of interacting. Rapid means fast. So this heading means that the new way of interacting, that is using emojis, has spread very fast. We do have the mention of emojis beginning their growth in 2011, And in 4 years, 90% of the online population was using it. So, sixth is mentioned in the passage. How and where emojis were invented. Actually, there is no mention of how and where emojis were invented. There is a mention of when they began their growth, which means when they started becoming popular. So, although there is a mention of a year when they began their growth, there are no details of how and where they were first invented. So, the two probable answers are first and sixth. Since the why part isn't clearly explained in section A, one is not a suitable option. When I first attempted this reading, I was still slightly unsure between first and sixth. However, I became doubly sure that sixth is the answer after I saw that first was the correct answer for another section. So, when I first attempted the reading, I did mark sixth as the correct answer, but on the side, I wrote first as something I was slightly confused about. This is one of the reasons we may get some headings wrong. If I had marked first as the heading of this section, I would have gotten two sections incorrect because it is the correct heading for another section. So once you have narrowed down the probable correct headings to two or three, if you are even slightly unsure, make a note of this in your rough sheet of paper or in your question paper so that you can recheck it later. So the answer to the 28th question is fourth. Let's start with section B now. This section has two paragraphs. The first sentence says, two reasons why language changes. The first reason is explained in the rest of the section. Section C begins with the second major reason that language changes. So, section B focuses on the first reason why language changes, and the second reason is given in section C. What this section means in simple language is, one reason language changes is how we relate or connect with each other. Language reflects, represents, or shows the changes in how we connect with each other. Different groups and generations use language in ways that express their personal identities, and language evolves or changes with new ideas. The second paragraph says, new words are regularly created. Emojis add to this. So, just as new words are created, emojis have also been created. But emojis are a new system, so they are a new system of expression in the vocabulary. Let's go through the headings now. The first and second headings are not relevant at all. There is no mention of emojis having a short life or how new emojis are designed or made available. The third heading says how words and emojis both fulfill new needs in our society. This could be the answer because the first paragraph explains how language changes and the second explains how emojis introduce a new system of expression. The fourth heading says how emojis are regarded in different ways by different cultures. There is a mention of different groups and different generations, but this is about language and these groups. This is not about emojis and how different cultures regard them. So, even though you could get confused if you're looking for the word different, this is not the answer. The fifth heading says the use of emojis in different fields and what this means. There is no mention of different fields in this section. The rapid spread of a new way of interacting. Again, it is not mentioned. The confusion could come from the phrase ever expanding. So, the ever expanding or something that is constantly becoming bigger is mentioned in reference to language and words in general. So, words are being created all the time. These new words keep adding to the ever growing or ever expanding vocabulary. Emojis are adding to this. So, this is not about the rapid spread of emojis or rapid spread of anything, whether it is words or language. It is just mentioned that language changes and grows all the time. How and where emojis were invented, not mentioned at all. The value of emojis for making feelings clear. A new system of expression is mentioned, but that is a new system of expressing things. Just as words are one system of expressing things, that does not mean it is referring to how important emojis are to express feelings or making the feelings clear. So, while fourth and seventh may seem tempting because of related words, they are not correct. The section starts by talking about language changes in general, but none of the headings focus on that. None of the headings are talking about changes in language. This section does mention both words and emojis, and I think it's the only section which mentions that. The answer comes primarily from the second paragraph, with the mention of how both words and vocabulary are needed to fulfill the communication needs of our society. The answer to the 29th question is third, how words and emojis both fulfill new needs in our society. Section C has two paragraphs. The parts that I focused on while trying to get the main idea of the section are highlighted in blue on your screen. What the section means in simple language is the second reason that language changes is technology. Technology changes how we interact or communicate with others. Emojis started and evolved because of mobile communication, such as text messages. So, computer mediated messaging is text messages. Texts, emails, and other similar forms of communication often lack emotions. Emojis make up for this lack of emotions. So, face to face communication can express emotions, can express feelings. This is missing in the messages. So, emojis give emotions to text messages. Let's go through the headings now. This section is all about how emojis add emotions to text messages and compensate for the lack of emotional context. The first heading is not mentioned at all. The second heading, ways in which new emojis are designed and made available, is also not the answer, even though there is a mention of emojis evolving. The main point is not about how emojis are designed or made available. 3 is already used for the previous section, and this section does not discuss words at all. There is a mention of expressing emotions which are not possible through mobile communication. However, words are not mentioned in this section at all. The fourth heading talks about different cultures, not mentioned in the section. The fifth heading says use of emojis in different fields. Technology and mobile communication is mentioned, but this section is about the role of emojis in mobile communication, not their use in different fields. The sixth heading says the rapid spread or the fast spread of emojis, not mentioned in this section. How and where emojis were first invented, not mentioned in this section at all. The eighth heading, the value of emojis for making feelings clear, is clearly the answer because the second paragraph of the section focuses on how emojis compensate for lack of emotional expression in text messages. So the answer to the 30th question is 8th. The second heading might confuse you because emojis evolving is briefly mentioned, but no details are provided about how they are designed or made. Fifth and sixth might seem tempting because the section discusses mobile communication or technology and texting, but the focus is not on the spread of emojis or their use in different fields. Third might seem like a probable heading because the section talks about how emojis address the lack of emotions in text communication, which is a new need created by technology. So, the mention of fulfilling emotional gaps might make you think this aligns with societal needs. However, there is no mention of words in this section. Let's start with section D. There are three paras in this section. Again, the parts I focused on while trying to get the gist of the section are on your screen in blue, and the meanings of some of the words and phrases are also on your screen. The simple meaning of this section is emojis are different from other language systems because becoming outdated seems to be a basic part of emojis. Operating systems of computers and smartphones are updated regularly. Similarly, emojis will also be updated regularly. So, their usefulness is limited. This is different from communication systems ever before. For example, if your landline phone is old, you buy a new one, but you do not need to change your language. Emojis are an example of how technology and human communication work together. They are leading the change in human communication caused by technology. There is also creativity involved in how they are used. An important word here is obsolescence. It comes from the word obsolete, which means outdated or no longer in use. So the first sentence says that emojis are unique because their tendency to become outdated or to become obsolete is built into their nature. This section contains a lot of content. It starts with how emojis are different from other language systems because of their tendency to become obsolete. Then there are examples comparing emojis with other systems such as computers, old landlines, etc. Let's go through the headings. The first heading says why emojis may have a short life. This section starts with the idea of obsolescence and then provides examples and comparisons to explain why emojis have a limited lifespan or why emojis have a short life. Phrases like their usefulness is limited make this the correct heading. However, this is a tricky one because this is a difficult word. And although the first two paragraphs of this section are giving examples of comparison between emojis and other forms of communication, they are rather difficult to get. However, by process of elimination, you can narrow down to the first one. So let's see what the rest of the headings are saying. The second heading says ways in which new emojis are designed and made available. There is a mention of technology and creativity in the use of emojis, but that is about how we use emojis. It is not about how emojis are designed. So, second is not the answer. The third one says how words and emojis both fulfill new needs in our society. While the section talks about communication and creativity, it does not discuss how words fulfill new needs of society. Again, not the answer. The fourth heading is about different cultures. There is no mention of cultural differences or various groups of people and how they perceive emojis. The fifth section is the use of emojis in different fields. Technology and communication are discussed, but the focus is not on their use in specific fields. So, fifth is not the answer. The sixth one says rapid spread of a new way of interacting. There is mention of technology. It might make you think of rapid spread of emojis, but this section actually focuses on obsolescence and not their widespread use. The seventh heading is how and where emojis were first invented. Like many sections, there is a brief mention of beginning of emojis, but no detailed explanations of how they were created or when they were invented. The eighth heading is the value of emojis for making feelings clear. This heading was just used for the previous section. Also, this section has no discussion about emojis or the emotional aspect of emojis. So, technology and creativity are mentioned. It might lead to confusion, but the focus is on how long emojis can last and not their design. So, where design is mentioned, it is about consumerism, innovation, design, not about design of emojis. Technology might make you think of rapid spread, but that is not what this section is about. The correct heading is the first one because the section explains why emojis have a short life. And this takes care of the slight confusion we had when we were doing section A because emojis having a short life is mentioned in section A as well, but the reasons were not given there. Section E is a single paragraph. The parts I focused on when trying to get the gist of the section are on your screen in blue, along with meanings of some of the words and phrases. The simple meaning of what is written in this section is emojis are a part of all aspects or areas or parts or fields of human society. After this, there are a lot of examples of these aspects or fields: politics, marketing, art, entertainment, musicals, films, fashion design, architecture, advertising, commerce. All of these are examples of different aspects. If we understand why emojis are popular, we can understand the relationship between technology, science, and human interactions. So, with the mention of all aspects of modern society, we can see that the fifth heading, which mentions different fields and the use of emojis in different fields, is the correct heading. However, let's start going through all the headings and see if there can be any confusion anywhere. The first heading about short life is not mentioned at all. The second heading about the ways in which emojis are designed is not mentioned either, but you could get confused with words like art and design in the passage, but they are names of the different fields. The third heading says how words and emojis both fulfill new needs in our society. Society and communication are mentioned, but the section does not focus on words at all. This is not the answer. The fourth heading is how emojis are regarded in different ways by different cultures. There is no mention of cultural perspectives on emojis. Fields like art and entertainment are mentioned, but not across different cultures. The fifth heading we've already talked about emojis being used in different areas or fields like politics, films, and advertising refers to their use in different fields. The phrase what this means to us connects to the idea of understanding the relationship between technology, society, and humans. The sixth heading is the rapid spread of a new way of interacting. This section is about varied applications of emojis, not on their widespread adoption or speed of their spread. The seventh heading is how and where emojis were first invented. This is not mentioned at all. The eighth heading is the value of emojis for making feelings clear. The section does talk about societal relationships and technology, but not about clarity of emotions. So, words like art, design, relationships can confuse you, but large parts of this section are just examples of the different fields. With this, we are done with this question type. Let's now start with the next question type, which is gap fill questions or complete the summary. For this question type, the answers are in the same order as the information in the text. Usually, the answers are from one specific part of the text, often from one or two paragraphs. Since the phrase face with tears of joy is in quotes, we should look for it in the passage. It is mentioned in the third paragraph of section A. Because the questions are in two paragraphs, the first three questions will likely have answers from this paragraph, and these two questions will most probably have answers from section B. Let's focus on question number 33 now. Meanings of some of the words and phrases from the paragraph are on your screen. Let's understand what the question means. The question says, before long or soon, emojis may seem to be what? The passage says, there is a good chance, so it is probable that the emoji which is faced with tears of joy will seem or will appear dated. Dated means something which is old fashioned or outdated. The answer to the 33rd question is dated. Let's continue with this part of the next sentence now, which has the 34th question. This is of interest as it tells us about developments in something. The question says that this thing about the emoji becoming old fashioned is interesting because it helps us to understand developments in something. This is of interest corresponds to this offers a fascinating insight into. So it offers a fascinating insight into the way in which society is evolving or about the developments in society. The answer to the 34th question is society. The word evolving means society is constantly developing and adapting. The 35th question says this provides an effective way to focus on two things. One is the future of human communication. We have to find the second thing on which we can focus. So, this helps us understand two things. One is the future of communication. What is the second thing? The passage says, the little yellow circle with dots for eyes. This is the emoji. It acts as a surprisingly good lens. A good lens is an effective way of looking at something. So, it provides a good lens through which to view two things. One is the history of human communication. The second is predict its future. The its here is the future of human communication. The answer is history. So, with this, we have three answers, all from one paragraph of section A. For the next set of questions, we move on to section B. Section B has two paragraphs. This part However, emojis are interesting as they are a system that expresses these ideas in a completely new way, has no blanks, and it corresponds with this part of the passage. A completely new way is a different way. Emojis are interesting. What's interesting about emojis? So, this tells us that the answers should be before this. The meanings of some of the words and phrases from the paragraph are on your screen. Let's understand what the question means. The question says the changes in language reflect or show or represent changes in relationships. These changes in languages show how something of groups and generations change, and these changes of languages allow something new to be included. Till here in the paragraph, we have this part of the question which has no blank. So we look for answer after this. And this is important because there are words like mirror and relate in this part, which may correspond to this part of the question. And it could confuse you. But we'll start looking for answers after this. As an expression of identity, identity means how people see and define themselves. So, in a way to express how people see themselves, language is adapted or changed by different groups to show their sense of self. The tricky part in this answer is that two parts of the passage, identity and sense of self, mean the same thing, how people see and define themselves. However, we can only have one word as our answer, and the word identity anyway fits better in this blank. You could get confused with sense of self, but as I said, the word identity means the same thing. The answer to the 36th question is identity. Let's move on to the 37th question now. The 37th question says, they allow new something to be included. They here is changes in languages. So, changes in languages allow new something to be included. The passage says, it, that is the language, needs to constantly assimilate or include fresh concepts as these evolve. As the concepts evolve or change, the language also needs to change to include or to allow inclusion of new or fresh concepts. The answer to the 37th question is concepts. With this, we are done with all the gap fill questions of this passage. What is noteworthy here is that first, looking for this phrase in quotes helped us locate where the answers could be very quickly. After that, because the question has two paragraphs, we looked for answers of these in one paragraph and answers of these in the next paragraph. Although the actual understanding took a while, just knowing that we have to look for answers in just two paragraphs helped us look for answers quickly. Let's now move on to the next set of questions, which are the multiple choice questions or the MCQs. Question 38 includes the phrase words of the year in quotation marks. This is an important clue because it tells us that the answer is likely to be located wherever this specific phrase appears in the text. In the passage, we find that words of the year is mentioned in the second paragraph of section A. Therefore, we should focus on this part of the text to determine the correct answer. Now we skim through the options, paying attention to the key parts. They are highlighted on the screen in blue. These highlighted phrases help us quickly identify the focus of each option. Meanings of some of the words and phrases from the questions and paragraph are displayed on the screen. Now let's go through the paragraph. Word of the year is mentioned starting from the third sentence. So that's where we'll begin reading from. The first sentence means emojis became so common that one was chosen as word of the year. The second sentence says that this tells us that words chosen as the word of the year reflect the mood, beliefs, or interest of that year. The third sentence says that the words of year represent things that are relevant to that particular time. Very much of their time means anything that strongly shows the idea of that time or anything that fits into that time. And the fourth sentence says that after a while, people forget the words of the year. Fade from people's consciousness means that they are gradually or slowly forgotten. Now let's look at the options. The first option talks about words of the year including more and more emojis, but the text doesn't mention anything about a trend of increasing emojis in words of the year. It just says that one emoji was chosen as one word of the year. In the passage before this sentence, it is mentioned that a lot of emojis were used, etc., but that has no connection to word of the year. Option B says they are soon forgotten by the public. This seems correct. The text says that words of the year fade from people's consciousness, which means that they are gradually forgotten. Option C says that they need to have a social significance. While the text mentions that words of the year reflect the ethos, mood, or preoccupation of that year, this doesn't necessarily mean they have social significance. It's more about the culture of the time rather than a broad social meaning. Option D says that words of the year are invented by the writers of dictionaries. This option suggests that the writers of dictionaries create the words of the year, but the text mentions that they choose words that are already in use, not words that they invent themselves. So the answer to the 38th question is B. The 39th question asks, the usefulness of emojis is limited because. When scanning the passage, we see the phrase, their usefulness is limited, mentioned in section D, paragraph 1. Since I've already solved list of headings, I was aware that this phrase would appear here. Next, we skim through the options, keeping in mind the key phrases that are highlighted in bold on screen. Now let's understand the paragraph sentence by sentence. The first sentence says that emojis are different from other languages because becoming outdated is an inherent or built-in feature of emojis. An important word here is obsolescence. It comes from the word obsolete, meaning something that becomes outdated. While this word was crucial for solving list of headings, we can answer this question without fully understanding it. Anyway, so the first sentence means that becoming outdated seems to be a basic feature of emojis. The second sentence compares emojis to smartphones and operating systems, saying emojis are regularly updated. The third sentence says that emojis are slightly redesigned with time and new emojis are added. And finally, it says that these frequent updates and changes are the reason emojis' usefulness is limited. In the options, option B says that they may not be correctly interpreted. This is not mentioned in the paragraph at all. Option C says they are difficult for some people to update. It is just mentioned that they are regularly updated. There is no mention of it being difficult for some people. Option D says they are linked to specific operating systems. Operating systems are mentioned only as a comparison. The text says emojis are updated like operating systems, but there is no suggestion that they are specifically linked to any operating system. Option A seems to be correct, says that emojis are constantly being changed. This seems to be the correct option. There are phrases like get routine enhancements, undergo subtle redesigns, and extra characters will be added. All of these point to emojis constantly changing. So the answer to the 39th question is A. The 40th question asks, what should be the subtitle for this text? This means we need to think about a subtitle for the entire passage. The title of the passage is Emojis, and a subtitle provides additional information about what the passage is about or its specific focus. In some IELTS reading passages, subtitles are already provided alongside the title. However, in this case, we need to decide what best summarizes the main theme or focus of the passage as a whole. To figure out the answer to this question, we need to figure out what each section of the text is mainly discussing. It's helpful that we have already completed the list of headings question and reviewed all the sections in detail. First, let's skim through all the options. The key parts of each option are highlighted in bold on the screen. Option A says that emojis will take over or will replace words one day. Option B says that the passage talks about how emojis can have more value or purpose. Option C says, are emojis being used excessively in our society today? And option D says, the passage is about what emojis tell us about the world that we live in. Note that two options, A and B, focus on things that could happen in the future. In contrast, C and D focus on the present, what is happening now. Let's quickly review what each section is saying. This is something we went through in detail for list of headings. Section A says that language is changing quickly and emojis are an important part of this change. Then it talks about when emojis started, how they became popular, and that one emoji was chosen as word of the year. It also says that emojis might be outdated or forgotten soon. The last sentence is important. It says that emojis are a good way to understand the history and future of human communication. Section B gives one reason why language changes. It talks about how we relate to each other and how people express their identity. This paragraph is important because one of the options talk about if emojis will replace words one day. This paragraph says that there are gaps in vocabulary that are filled by new words and also by emojis. But this does not mean that emojis will replace words or become more important than words one day. Section C talks about another reason why language is changing. It's all about technology. It says that emojis started because of text messaging. Emojis help show feelings and emotions in text messages, which is something that is missing in text messages. Section D compares emojis to other language systems. It talks about how smartphones and their operating systems need to be updated regularly, and emojis also need to be updated regularly. It also mentions communication systems of the past, like landline phones. The last paragraph says that emojis are an example of how technology and human communication work together, showing how technology is changing the way we communicate. Section E says that emojis are seen in almost every part of modern society, from politics and marketing to art and entertainment. Finally, it says that understanding why emojis are so popular helps us understand our relationship with technology, society, and each other. Option A and B talk about what might happen in the future. The future is mentioned in section A, where it says that emojis can help us understand both the history and future of communication. It also mentions that in future, emojis may eventually be forgotten. But this is not mentioned in either of the options that we have regarding the future. The passage does mention that emojis are widely used, that they are very popular, but it never says that they are used excessively or they should be used less, which means that C is not the correct option either. Therefore, option D is correct. We can specially see this from the ends of sections A, D, and E, which focus on the current role of emojis in the world. From this, we get a helpful tip. When you're trying to give a heading or subheading to the entire passage, it can be useful to read the beginning and end of each section. This often helps in understanding the main idea. With this, we have completed the solutions for all the questions of this reading. I hope this explanation was helpful. I'll keep posting solutions for more readings along with tips and strategies on how to find answers in my upcoming videos. All the very best.